Hi everyone. So as Angela said, I'm Ching Leung, and if you don't know me, I am from Shatin College, this school. And the thing that I want to talk about today is something that has really been um, pressing on my mind lately. It's really been a prominent concern for me and hopefully you in this day and age. And I'm sure that once I mention the topic, your little brains will all light up with your own individual opinions. So, what I wanted to talk about today was the fear of or harsh rejection of different minorities and social communities in our society and how we could accept and tolerate them in the future. So, after this talk, I hope that we could stride into the future stocked up with a real sense of unification and tolerance. So I'm not sure if it's just me getting older and older and wiser and realizing how discrimination can come into play in society, or is it the fact that it's actually getting more prominent in our modern society? This I don't know, but I assume that it may be getting more prominent due to recent events. I'm sure that you guys have all realized that the last presidential US presidential campaign has been a heck of a roller coaster for not only people in the United States, but also spectators watching in other countries. So I'm sure you've all heard that in his early days of being in office, he one of his first moves was to ban people coming into the US from 8 predominantly Muslim countries. So this not only caused problems in airport or immigration or rights, but also to me, it really demonstrated that deep-rooted problem that not only Trump, but the capability in all of us to have a sense of prejudice. So, up here on the screen, you can see Trump travel ban. Court questions if it is anti-Muslim. So that was what I was talking about before. But I don't think that Trump's discrimination or a sense of that us versus them mentality is isolated to the Islamic community alone. I think that it's also prominent with his views towards other communities, as you can see through these other articles. So here it says report Trump preparing to license to discriminate order, and the third one says draft order exposes Trump's plan to license anti-LGBT discrimination. So to me, this really shows how we all have the capability to be prejudiced and to discriminate. And what I wanted to focus on today was how we could use these certain psychological theories to really manipulate that and see how we can gear our minds towards a more accepting attitude. So in this picture, I would like you to raise your hand the minute you notice that something is different. All right, that's pretty quick. And can you do it again for this slide? All right, faster than I expected. But what I wanted to demonstrate through this quick activity was the fact that because an object is different in color or shape or size, your eyes will immediately gravitate towards that position because it really grabs your attention. So that's what I wanted to show through this. And now I want to do an activity for you guys where the next slide that flashes up on the screen, I would like you to just follow the instructions. All right, yeah. You guys did that really well. That was actually also faster than I expected. But basically, what I wanted to demonstrate through that is how we could fall into certain patterns of thinking, whether or not it is from a position of authority or not. So for example, this could be a position of authority telling you to do something, or it could be a certain trend of thinking that's brewing from society itself, and maybe it can come out of that. But regardless of where it comes from, I just wanted to show how people could conform to just what other people around them were doing. So this could result in certain paradigm shifts or trends in thinking, which could also contribute to how we discriminate against other people. So the psychological theory that one of them that I would like to focus on today are the Gestalt Laws. And basically these are a set of rules, a set of perceptual rules that help us categorize our visual stimuli. So when you look around, it's very chaotic. There are all kinds of shapes and colors and sizes all around you, and these rules are what our brain uses to be able to tell objects apart and turn chaos into order. So that is what I wanted to focus on, and I will use these rules to try and show how we categorize humans instead of categorizing visual shapes. So the first rule that I would like to take a look at is continuity. And here you see a series of dots, right? But you may also see two lines. This is because we want certain shapes and patterns to be in a predictable pattern, because we feel that there's an order and there's no chaos and there's no diversity, you know what I mean? So that is the law of continuity. The next law is the law of proximity, and this is where in figure A you may see a square, but in figure B you might see a series of columns, yeah? So again, it's just a series of dots, but because in figure B some of the dots are closer to each other, we tend to associate those things together when they're close to each other. So this is how we can start to categorize things and again make sense of the chaos. So the next rule is the rule of closure, and here is where we seem to see a shape, but it's not really there. Because, for example, with the figure over here, you may see a triangle, but in reality, there is no triangle. Instead, there is a series of Pac-Man looking things. And on this side, you see a panda, which is the WWF logo, but there is no panda. This is because our brain likes to fill in the gaps so that we can make sense of it, so that we can understand it, and so that the chaos is no longer there. So this is how we can try and fill in the gaps and how our brain manipulates our visual stimuli to make it make sense. All right, so the next one is similarity, and this is where things that have similar characteristics we tend to group together and assume that they are associated with each other. So here again it's just a series of dots and squares, but you might also perceive vertical lines going downwards. This is because those vertical lines are those circles which look the same as each other, and the squares that look the same as each other. And the last rule is figure ground. Now this is a very famous optical illusion. I'm sure you've all seen it before. But the reason why it works is because we cannot tell what is the figure and what is the ground. So the figure is usually smaller and more symmetrical and more complex than the ground. And the ground would be bigger and less complex and less symmetrical than the figure. So this is how we can perceive depth. For example, I can tell my hand is apart from you guys in the audience. I can tell that a flower is different from a hill. And this is how we can tell what we're supposed to be focusing on and what our attention immediately draws to. So another theory that I would like to link in with this, another psychological theory, is the social identity theory. This is where we have a sense of identity by having group memberships. What I mean by group memberships is the fact that I may be a student and I'm a member of the school. I may be a member of my family as a daughter, and I may be a member of my friendship group as a friend. So as you can see, I start to form different identities. It's as if there are 3 different Hui Chings, because I act differently, I talk differently, I dress differently in all of these 3 categories. So you start to form different identities. So because we've got this sense of identity, which is dictated by our group memberships, we start to form this thing called in-groups and out-groups. And an in-group is basically your own group, and an out-group is whoever is outside. So here we start to draw the line around ourselves, saying you are different from me. You don't belong to my group, and this is what protects our sense of self-esteem, so that we feel a sense of belonging to a certain group. So as you can see, this kind of develops that us versus them mentality that can start to lead to prejudice and separation. So as you can see, there are a couple names up on the board, and I don't know if you know these people or not. Most of them have been to Schatten College, and these are people who I would consider my close friends. Now, recently, I've begun to realize a very, very strange phenomenon in my life, and I'm not sure if it's supposed to worry me or if it's just quite interesting. So they all have a common characteristic that I realized, and here it is. So if you don't know, our school is split into 4 houses, and we use these 4 houses to kind of compete against each other and to try and get house points and get a house cup at the end. And so I found out that all my close friends are in my house, Griffin, which was quite strange to me. And I began to realize, is this due to convenience, the fact that, oh, they're just in my class or we go to the same activities? But on the other hand, some people haven't been at Shelton College for a number of years. And so that was strange to me too. So I wanted to try and see whether this was due to convenience or was it due to something else, maybe something else within me that I didn't know about. So I wanted to blow this up onto a much larger scale that's probably more applicable to Hong Kong and you guys, which is local Hong Kong people's attitude towards people coming down from mainland China. So in the first article, it says mainland Chinese students face discrimination in Hong Kong. So quite straightforward. But in the article, it details a study where they took focus groups of 15 mainland students from 4 universities. And in these focus groups, they kind of talked about their experience as a mainland student who was studying in Hong Kong. And all of them reported discrimination. So for example, one of the girls who was studying in Hong Kong as a mainland student had her mom come down from China, and since her mom doesn't speak Cantonese, she speaks Putonghua, they conversed in Putonghua. And when the girl turned to a shopkeeper and started to be speaking to the shopkeeper in Putonghua, the shopkeeper just turned around and started walking away. So this sense of discrimination is prominent in Hong Kong. But on the other hand, you have this second article which says xenophobia in Hong Kong. We are far from it, thankfully. And in this study, it actually says that 26.5% of mainland students and only 26.5% of mainland students feel a sense of discrimination or have been discriminated in Hong Kong. So what this is basically saying is that in the article, and I quote this, it says, it suggests that Hong Kong is a true paradise for immigrants compared to Europe and North America. So that was quite interesting to me, how in this whole mess and chaos of different opinions and how we categorize people, these kinds of different opinions can occur, even if they're completely opposing one another. And in the last one it says, one country, two identities. Hong Kong navigates an uncertain future. And in this article, it was quite interesting because this was talking about how when local Hong Kong people introduce themselves, they say, oh, I'm from Hong Kong. They never say, I'm from China. And if they did say, I'm from China, they would never say, I'm from mainland China. So that was kind of prominent to me because it was drawing that line again, that circle, that us versus them mentality where some people think that some people have really established that line where we are not a part of you and you have nothing to do with us. So I would like to go through how you could apply the Gestalt Laws to the relationship between mainland Chinese students, mainland Chinese people in general in Hong Kong, and local Hong Kong people, and check out their interaction through these Gestalt Laws. So with figure ground, as I said, the figure is usually a lot smaller than the ground, right? So in this whole sea of Hong Kong people, mainland Chinese people are minority. Well, there's just less of them since we are in Hong Kong. So since there are less of them, imagine you're in a field and you've got lots and lots of Hong Kong people, but only a small portion of mainland Chinese people. Now, because it's smaller than the ground, we would immediately point our eyes to that position. And once we grab our once that kind of group has grabbed our attention, we can start to say, you're obviously different from us. So that's one of the ways in which we can categorize humans. And the next one, proximity. Usually when you're coming down from a different place, maybe for recreational reasons in Hong Kong, you would bring family and friends. So imagine you're in a shopping mall and you see these groups of mainland Chinese people, and obviously they're standing closer together because they know each other, whereas two Hong Kong people who are complete strangers would not stand as close to each other because they don't know each other. So this was really interesting because mainland Chinese people would stand closer together, what I thought was that our eyes would directly shoot to their position because we assume that they're associated with each other, and that's how the law of proximity could work in categorizing humans. Now on to similarity. Now, because mainland Chinese people are coming down from a different place, obviously you are going to take a suitcase with you. So local Hong Kong people have built up this stereotype that, oh, all mainland Chinese people are going to bring suitcases with them. Or oh, when they're off on tourist groups, sometimes they would have a flag to identify that they're tourists, or they would have like those little stickers to identify that they are indeed tourists from mainland China. And with these visual characteristics, with these similar characteristics, we can start to associate them with a certain group, creating a stereotype. And because of this sense of similarity, where their characteristics can be classified together, we can start to group them together and again have that us versus them mentality. So throughout this presentation, I really hope that I've shown you how we can use these psychological theories to categorize not only visual stimuli, but also categorize humans, which might be quite a strange realization, but when I figured this out, I just thought, oh, I have to share this. So I hope that together we can stride into the future with a sense of tolerance, acceptance, and open eyes. Thank you.